With another week in the books in both college and NFL football, we have a bit more of an understanding of what's going to happen in this upcoming draft, both with the players and with the draft order. We have the Jaguars, who basically are already going to be at the top, whether the Giants are going to be tanking the rest of the season or if they win it all for the rest of the season. We don't know. And the Raiders are just the same way. They're also 2-9. We don't even know what's going to happen with them. There's no clear shit team, for lack of better terms. Usually it's someone like the Browns that went like 0-16. You knew that they were going to be bad. The Panthers, another team that basically won like one game at one point. It's not that type of draft order, but there's still bad teams, and that is the Jaguars, Giants, and Raiders. Now, with that, we have some room to deal certain prospects to certain places. And with the first pick, it's pretty clear how that's going to go. And that's going to be Travis Hunter. I mean, he's obviously a weapon on both sides of the ball. And the Jaguars might use him in a way of packaging him in, but not like in a Taysom Hill type of way. It's more of a frequent thing that you can game plan for it, but you might not know what they're going to do next with him. Taysom Hill is very known. If the ball's going to him, unless he's at tight end, it may not. But he's definitely one of the top options whenever he is in the game. Now, he's able to play QB, rush the ball. When he's at QB, he can play running back. He's the Swiss Army knife for the Saints. Travis Hunter would do a bit more for the Jaguars since he would be able to play on defense. And I think that's where I think that they would have him at. Yes, wide receiver may be the way they try to go, but I think he's very talented on defense and can do a lot more for a team on defense with stopping the ball, especially with a team like the Jaguars. Now, enough about Travis Hunter. We're going to move on to the New York Giants at the second spot. This quarterback has basically been getting all the hype in the past 2 or so years, especially last year. But this year, we've seen another QB make his mark in Cam Ward. This one is Shaduer Sanders. Now, Shaduer Sanders probably wants to go to the Raiders because it's worked out. Tom Brady, who he worked out with in the summer or in one of these off seasons, is an owner of the Raiders. He would be able to mentor him even more. Now, if he would still be broadcasting, I don't know. But either way, Shaduer Sanders is probably not going to be going to the Raiders in this mock draft. Now, that is because he's been one of the better QBs, one of the more consistent ones. And only 1% of his dropbacks are really turnover-worthy plays. And you can't really get much better than that with a rookie QB that you would be getting. And Shaduer is one of the more accurate ones. I still have no idea how Jalen Milroe is higher than both of these guys in PFF rankings. But to me, Shaduer should be the first QB off the board. Not only with his talent, but with the hype that he's been getting constantly over this past couple months since the college season did start. He's been great. He's very mature in the pocket, but not mature enough to the point that he's going to be a superstar immediately. Still needs to develop, but I think the Giants can work with him. And having a weapon like Malik Neighbors already, the second that you get into the team, is a great option also because he was already used to having Travis Hunter as that go-to guy if he needed him. But he's able to pass the ball around. He's able to figure it out. Wan'Dale Robinson, another great wide receiver on that team. Jalen Hyatt might not be on the team come next year with his trade request or release request. I don't know what they're going to do with him. But Shaduer should be going to the New York Giants, although he probably wants to go to the Raiders. He'll probably just be happy going back-to-back with Travis Hunter at that point. 1 and 2, both Colorado players. Should help Colorado, should help those prospects a lot. And their future QB, Juju Williams, who should be very good, and I'm excited for that mock draft in the far future. But the Las Vegas Raiders are now on the board, and seeing that Shaduer Sanders is off, they want to still go QB. Now, in my opinion, this is the QB1 of the draft, and that is Cam Ward. Cam Ward has been one of the more consistent QBs in this draft, and I said that about Shaduer, but my QB1 has always been Cam Ward. I try to balance between the majority opinion and my own. Cam Ward has been the type of player that you can get a high impact play on any play. I think it's about like 6%, if I'm not mistaken, of them that he's able to get a big impact play that the Raiders have not been able to see for a while, since they had Gardner Minshew and Aiden McConnell as their QBs this year, and haven't really seen much since Derek Carr left or got traded. I don't know. I think it was from free agency. But Cam Ward should be able to bring a bright future to the Raiders. Now, if Max Crosby's still on the team, still a great future. Wide receiver may be something that they need to look at in the next rounds, or maybe even this round if they decide to trade up. But at this very moment, I have them taking Cam Ward out of UM. I think you can't go wrong with him. You can't go wrong with him. He is very developed and very matured in a pocket. He doesn't rush. He doesn't panic. Once he trusts his offensive line on the Raiders, I think he will do tremendously. And moving on to the New England Patriots, I've been going tackle a lot for them, but I'm not going to go that route this time. This time I'm going to take T-Mac out of Arizona, who has really been the definition of consistency. He's ran about 2.7 yards per route, which is one of the better stats in this wide receiver class that we have going on here. It hasn't been one of those wide receiver classes that you can say, like, this guy is the guy. Travis Hunter's listed as a wide receiver. You might as well just put him wide receiver, cornerback. I don't put him as a single position. But Tatario McMillan has definitely been standout, especially with the way that he started off the season. He's been more of a consistent plateau pace for the rest of the season, but it hasn't been bad nonetheless. And with this pick, it would be more of a giving a weapon to Drake May, in contrast to the past that the Patriots have done, and should help them a lot more than just trying to get a tackle, trying to protect Drake May, and have Drake May figure it out with the players that he has. I think T-Mac is the best pick for the New England Patriots here. And the Carolina Panthers, who have been improving with Bryce Young at the helm, makes us go a different route than we have been in the past. We've been taking Jalen Milroe a lot for the Panthers, specifically because of his raw talent and athletic ability. But we're not going to go with him this time. We're not going to go with him since Bryce Young has been on the ups for the Carolina Panthers, has almost beaten the Chiefs, which that was a crazy game to say the least. But beat the prior team and has had himself a good couple games and should be able to continue to develop. But now, with him performing well on the offensive side of the ball, we are going to look at the defensive side of the ball. And we're going to go Abdul Carter out of Penn State, which Penn State has seemed like the new edge rusher university at this point, with Micah Parsons also coming out of Penn State, a couple other edge rushers that I can remember, but not going to name them at this moment. But Abdul Carter has 39 pressures and 13 combined sacks and QB hits on the season. He has a lot of upside, and I could definitely see him helping this Panthers defense as much as possible. He's the best edge rusher in this draft class, in my opinion, and could replace that Brian Burns type of player that they had previously. And the Tennessee Titans at the 6th spot, another team whose QB has improved. Hasn't been tremendous, but he's improved with the coaching scheme, with the coach. At least the coach hasn't given up on him. At points, it's a bit questionable. But we're not going to go QB for the Titans either, because Jalen Milroe hasn't been the definition of I need that QB type of prospect. The Titans, I see them going defense with Will Johnson. It's really best player on the board that can help the team. And getting a player like Will Johnson, Levis has been performing well, but Johnson has been consistent for the past 3 years that he's been in college. And in my opinion, is the best pure corner in this class. Although Michigan has been going downhill all season. Now, they might make a turnaround next year. We don't know that yet. But Will Johnson has been very solid over these past couple years and should be able to help and make the Titans a lot younger on defense. They did just get L'Jarius Sneed, who's been dealing with an injury. But adding another young corner should be able to help him develop and also be that CB1 of the future for them. And the Titans have always been known to be that defensive type of team. With that being said, Will Johnson from Michigan should be going to the Titans at this moment to Tennessee. The New York Jets. The definition of a dumpster fire. I stopped myself from saying a lot of cuss words. But this is the spot where I'm going to finally have Jalen Milroe going. It's the type of situation that even if Aaron Rodgers comes back next year, it's great for Jalen Milroe because then he would be able to sit a year, learn from Aaron Rodgers as Jordan Love learned from Aaron Rodgers as well. A bit shorter of a time span than what Jordan Love was able to get. But Jalen Milroe would be able to prevent the Jets from falling back 5 years with them getting Aaron Rodgers and having to make all these trades to make Aaron Rodgers happy, having to make all these moves. Sauce Gardner, I don't know where the fuck he went. It's like the Space Jam aliens came down and just took all his talent and just put him back out on the football field and haven't given it back since. I don't know what happened. But hopefully he's able to turn it around after his sophomore year. Clearly, it's just been not great. Oh, wait, not even the sophomore year. He's just not been fantastic this year. Maybe it's just the fact that the overall defense is not performing well. They need to turn it around. But QB would be a great pick, especially with the upside that Jalen Milroe has. He's been good for Alabama, has been tremendous at points, but sometimes can be very bad like he was in this past game. Threw 3 picks. One of them maybe wasn't necessarily his fault. It was a pass of him trying to get it off, gets hit, goes up in the air, gets picked off, and I think they scored on that play. But the other 2 were just unnecessary. It was trying to force the ball into a tight space that the defensive back was already reading it. And a screen pass, and I think the other one was a crosser. Maybe both were screen passes. Either way, Jalen Milroe has a lot of upside. Could be the Anthony Richardson of this draft class just with his athletic ability and being able to give something of a different feel to the Jets, a younger feel to the Jets. And I think he would be able to get the ball to the players that he needs to on a more consistent basis than Aaron Rodgers has this year. With the Cleveland Browns now here at the 8th pick, I'm going to have them going a position that I haven't necessarily focused on or emphasized for them in these past ones. I mean, I think I picked one time T-Mac for them when they were at a higher pick. But this time, I'm going to go Luther Burden III out of Missouri for Cleveland. Because Luther Burden in November, on 20 receptions, he's been able to get 200 yards and 2 TDs. It seems like the QB for Missouri just actually grew a brain. Because all season, it just seemed like they weren't even... Sorry, I almost dropped my water. Almost all season, it's basically seemed like they just haven't tried to target Luther that as much as they should. It's been weird over in Missouri, but this month they've kind of gotten more into the pace. He was already one of the most talented wide receivers in this draft class, if not the most talented. Now we're starting to see it, and hopefully we can continue to see it as these upcoming weeks go on and we come to the end of the college football season. Maybe even the combine helps them. But the Browns are in a desperate need for a wide receiver 1, and they really just don't have that right now. Jerry Jeudy's not a wide receiver 1. Sorry, Browns fans. Cedric Tillman, not a wide receiver 1. Elijah Moore, not a wide receiver 1. Luther Burden has the capability of being that for the Cleveland Browns. The New Orleans Saints. Obviously, I think most of everybody know that they're going to go edge rusher. Nick Squirtin would be able to fit that role perfectly because they're in a position right now that they've had great edge rushers in the past. great edge rushers right now. Some of them might be on the way out. Chase Young, we don't know if he's going to be back. Cameron Jordan, also. Nick Scorton would be able to start a future on that line that they would much need. And he performed a lot better at Purdue than he has this year at Texas A&M. But I think it's because a lot of offensive lines and offensive game plans are centered around making sure he's not able to do anything. And it helps the rest of the Texas A&M defensive line to be able to get in, like Shamar Stewart, that we might talk about later. Nick Scorton has been great nonetheless. Has the upside that he had last year. I think he's still great. When he gets to the NFL, I don't think they're going to be emphasizing him as much. They might just worry about the overall defensive line. If Chase Young isn't there, Cameron Jordan isn't there, they're going to have multiple people to have to figure out who is the star. And he might be the guy at one point. But I think at the start of his rookie career, he should be very good to help that New Orleans Saints defense and just help that defense grow even more for the years to come. But now the Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, man. Boy, do they need defense. But I don't think it's going to be a position that they can go here. Because the only ones that I could see them going was possibly Will Johnson, which they might be able to get at this point because they're just probably going to keep losing because of the defense. Or, I mean, they would love to get Travis Hunter. That's not going to happen, though. We're going to worry about wide receiver. With the fact that T. Higgins is most likely on his way out, that doesn't help that offense, or doesn't help the team at all, even more. This is the pick that a lot of people are probably going to be scratching their heads about, and that is Emeka Egbuka. I have personally liked Emeka Egbuka in his college career. Went back to Ohio State last year. Has showed that he is that type of wide receiver that you can depend on. And he has what I said in the last mock draft, if you missed it, an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of build. Or Amon-Ra St. Brown type of player that he'll be a reliable wide receiver for Joe Burrow, as T. Higgins is, really. But T. Higgins can also be that go up and get it type of guy. They can rely on Jamar Chase to be that, and Emeka Egbuka like in an Amon-Ra type of scheme, that he is more on the dependable routes. He's going to be able to get open when he needs to. Joe Burrow can look to him to be that guy. And then Jamar Chase is just on those go routes. But Emeka Egbuka just seems like the perfect scenario to replace T. Higgins. I know that they've gone wide receiver in these past couple drafts, like Burton, and they have, oh my God, I blanked on the other wide receiver immediately after that, but I know him. I know him vividly because of fantasy specifically in the early parts of the fantasy season. But those guys aren't going to be very good wide receiver twos, in my opinion, as much as Emeka Egbuka would be for Joe Burrow and that Bengals offense. But they definitely, if they're not able to get defense in free agency, they probably are going to have to go with it in the draft, which we will talk about closer to the draft. Now, the Dallas Cowboys are basically the team that everybody is expecting to go one route and one route only, and that is Ashton Genty. One of the best running back prospects that we've seen in the history of the draft. Has the potential to possibly beat Barry Sanders in his record that he had in college. I don't know if he's still on pace. I haven't kept up with that, but I know that he's been having consistent 100-yard games. And, I mean, he's been facing pretty piss-poor teams as of late, but basically every single game he's been that guy. And you can't go wrong with that, especially with his break tackle ability. I just love watching him. I would hate seeing him in a Cowboys uniform, but it just seems like the best case scenario for them. And the Dallas Cowboys would need it. Mason Graham was a possibility at the spot, but with the struggles that they have on offense, I can't go anywhere else but an offensive position, and this just seems like the best case scenario for them. For sure. Ashton Genty to the Dallas Cowboys. And moving forward, the Chicago Bears are looking at the fact that they passed on Mason Graham being the Dallas Cowboys, and they're immediately taking him. I can talk about him after he's off the draft board. Mason Graham has been a game wrecker at most points in this season and has had 33 pressures on the season. Force of nature. I think he's the best defensive line player in this draft class, but Abdul Carter has made a case for himself throughout the season. Also, with the fact that Mason Graham's on the interior, a lot of teams are doubling, tripling Mason Graham in college, which should be a bright spot for him coming into the draft. But he has a lot of power and a lot of ability to get to the QB and pressure as much as possible. And I would love to see him on the Bears next to those edge rushers that they have. But the Indianapolis Colts are in desperate need of a safety. And I've made it clear in these past couple mock drafts that Malachi Starks should be that pick for the Colts. No matter what, the Colts need to make sure that they get Malachi Starks. He is the best and probably the only safety that you can get in the first round. One of the better players in the Georgia secondary who hasn't really had much of season that they expected Georgia to have in terms of the overall secondary. But Malachi Starks should be able to fill the hole that the Colts have been needing in that backfield. And I just can't see Malachi Starks going anywhere else but the Colts. And that defense would be very, very good come the future. And this spot also seems very obvious. Tackle is a desperate need. Now, it's between Will Campbell and Calvin Banks Jr. In my opinion, I'm still going to be going Will Campbell. Yes, I know Calvin Banks Jr. probably has performed much better than Will Campbell. I'm still going to take him. It's 1A, 1B for me. But with the way that Will Campbell's kind of been lackluster this season, he's had the past seasons that he's been good. I called him Joe Alt at one point. Maybe that was a stretch or a reach, if you will. But he's able of taking that jump when he gets to the NFL. Now, this might change by the time of next week, the week after, the end of the college football season, that Kelvin Banks is actually the guy that goes to the Dolphins. But these tackles haven't really been those type of tackles that you need to get. And we haven't had a lot of those in recent memory. But Will Campbell should be going to the Dolphins with the aging Teron Armstead and the sometimes inconsistent Austin Jackson. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be taking a position that is another high value but also risky prospect in James Pierce Jr. James Pierce Jr. reminds me a lot about the Kalijah Cansey situation, but James Pierce at one point was supposed to be the number one pick. He was favorited to be the number one pick because he has insane athleticism and he's great in the pass rush. He just hasn't been able to put it on tape in terms of showing that he's capable of being that top 3 pick in the draft or number 1 pick in the draft that a lot of other players have been able to do. But he would bring a talent to the Bucs edge rushers that they haven't had in a while. The last capable one that they had was really Shaq Barrett. They have Tryon right now. They have a decent room, but James Pierce Jr., I feel, can make a big step forward if he's in that Bucs defense that has everybody that have a significant amount of talent. But James Pierce should be going to the Bucs, and it might surprise people that he would be going above players with the like of Michael Williams or LT Overton. I wouldn't say Shamar Stewart would be going above James Pierce in many mock drafts, but who knows? The LA Rams, though, are a team that have an offensive line question mark just written all over them. With injuries, with age, a lot of different players have been leaving. A lot of different players have been dealing with injuries or season-ending injuries, like Avila that they just picked up. But with him being young and with him coming back, they also have an expiring contract in their left tackle. And Josh Simmons has the possibility of being this pick. But as of right now, I feel like Kelvin Banks is just the guy for the LA Rams to go get at left tackle and be their left tackle of the future. He's performed greatly. And them building their offensive line while they still possibly have Matthew Stafford for another year, because he's been performing great this year. I can't see them trying to move on from him until maybe next draft. Kelvin Banks Jr. should be able to help Matthew Stafford now and help the future QB, with the future QB possibly coming into a situation that the line is already set in place, which would be a very, very comfortable spot for that QB and the Los Angeles Rams. As the San Francisco 49ers being a surprise pick at the 17th spot, losing another game with Brock Purdy being out 34-10 is wild. But with Brock Purdy being out, Trent Williams being out, they were missing a lot of talent. And whenever you're dealing with injuries, whenever you're dealing with significant losses throughout the whole season, it's not fun. And they've been struggling. They've been struggling to say the least. But I'm definitely going to have them going a position that seems to be not only aging, but they have expiring contracts at. The cornerback room for the 49ers, Travarius Ward has an expiring contract. They have another corner that has an expiring contract. Who knows if they're going to be able to get Ward back. Getting a player like Benjamin Morrison, I know he hasn't been great this year, but also in the past couple years, he has been consistent. I know that I've said that for a few of these players, but this draft hasn't been very great in terms of guys this year that have been performing great this year at positions that are in need. They just need to take what they can get in terms of what they know. They've seen the tape from the past couple years. Yes, Benjamin Morrison hasn't had a great year, but neither has Notre Dame. And you could say the same thing about other players like Will Johnson and his situation at Michigan. This whole college football playoff change has messed up a lot of teams, and the scheduling has messed up a lot of these players because they haven't been able to really show off their talent as much as they want to, with schemes being the prioritization instead of the overall player. But Benjamin Morrison has been a CB1 at Notre Dame, and I expect them to add a lot of talent to this 49ers defense. The younger they get, the better, because they are in need of some hope at this point, because I don't know which way they're going. The Arizona Cardinals, though, at the 18th spot, I could see going many different routes. They could go linebacker. They could definitely go in defensive interior. But this draft, I've been more focused on what would help the team win. And getting a player like Isaiah Bond would help them even more, because it seems like Kyler Murray, yes, he has McBride. Great tight end. I love McBride for Kyler Murray. Marvin Harrison has been great, but they've been basically doubling and tripling him at all points in the season. Michael Wilson has been a great wide receiver too, but who do you have outside of that? Because once Marvin Harrison is neutralized, you have McBride, who is a tight end, so he's not going to get into space super quick. He's talented, but it's all short routes. You might not be able to get downfield as much as you want to with those short routes. And Michael Wilson, if he's not catching the ball, you're shit out of luck. And that's basically what happened against the Seahawks. If you're able to get a player like Isaiah Bond, who is a Jalen Waddle type of player, as I've said before, he could complement both of those wide receivers greatly. And it might leave defenses questioning where the hell they're going to go. So I'm going to go with the best player on the board for what the team needs. Excuse me. And that is Isaiah Bond out of Texas. He's been consistent over the past few years. I love watching him, and I think he has that big play ability at all points in the game. And that would help even Marvin Harrison get the ball more, because having Marvin Harrison is great, but not whenever there's really nobody else that the defense is going to be like, wow, we really have to focus on that guy. Because at points he gets neutralized, at other points they just put one man on him and he has himself a game. But moving on, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the 19th spot, who I can't see going anywhere else but an edge rusher. And at this point in the draft, Mykel Williams seems like the best case scenario for them. I know that they want to go get Judon. I know that they have Grady Jarrett. But Mykel Williams is a great run defender, which the Falcons have been wishy-washy on their run defending. They have been good at times, but at other points they haven't been great. And being that he's already in Georgia, he could help the Atlanta Falcons a lot with edge rusher being a position that the Falcons really have never had up until Matthew Judon came in this year. And I can't say much more about him because I just can't see a better fit for the Atlanta Falcons at this point in the season. The Seahawks are in a position where they could either take Simmons or Ursery. It's really a coin flip in terms of where they want to go with that. But before Josh Simmons got injured in week 7, he only allowed 2 pressures, and neither of those were a hit or a sack. And that was on 150 pass blocking attempts. So Geno would enjoy that greatly with the fact that he's constantly having to get out the pocket. Yes, they have Abraham Lucas. Yes, they have Charles Cross, but they've been good but not great. Getting some depth at those positions, not having to re-sign Abraham Lucas might help the Seahawks even more. Just keeping that offensive line young with Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, I think is the best case scenario for them with how he literally only allowed 2 pressures. That blows my mind. But the Washington Commanders are also in a position to need tackle. And it was going to be Ursery or Simmons for them too. It was just depending on who was still left on the board at this point. And Ursery is and has been in the top 5 tackles throughout the whole season. And a lot of teams need tackle. Or at least new tackles. Because a lot of the left tackles from the past are getting older and older and older. And you can only use them for so long. If you get another pass blocker like Ursery for Jaden Daniels, it will only help his development even more. Because at points we've seen his weak spots, but he's been great so far. I mean, his pass blocking has been one of the better stats in this draft class, and I can't see Ursery going anywhere else but the Washington Commanders in this very scenario. The Houston Texans, though, at the 22nd spot, need defensive interior, and there's been a guy that's been climbing up the ranks in terms of defensive interior, and that's Alfred Collins. He has been making his way up in Texas. He slightly beats out TJ Sanders for me just because I like TJ Sanders. I like how he's been performing at South Carolina. But Alfred Collins, I don't know. His run defending has been tremendous lately. That's all I can really put that puts him aside from TJ Sanders. Although TJ has been fantastic, I could definitely see that being the pick for the Texans with his run defending. I mean, he's been something else. 326.5, 90 PFF grade in run defending. That's just hard to pass up on for the Houston Texans in terms of what he's been able to do for that defensive line. But the Denver Broncos, who surprisingly have been very good in this season with Bo Nix, because they started off kind of iffy. But unfortunately, the Chargers are going to have to lose out on a pass catcher, and that is Colson Loveland. Colson Loveland played for Harbaugh, but has been really one of the only pass catchers in that Michigan offense that has been able to consistently catch the ball. And Bo Nix has been going to Cortland Sutton a significant amount. If they're able to bring somebody else that can be reliable for him, he's only going to get more dangerous and more confident in the pocket for the Denver Broncos, and he's been looking tremendous lately. He's been looking great. I think they could be another team that beats the Chiefs other than the Bills. I thought the Panthers were going to be able to do it, but the Broncos almost beat them already in the week prior to the Bills beating them. In the last week of the season, I could definitely see the Broncos making a case to beat them just because of divisional matchup. I don't expect them to rest any players in that game. With it being the Chiefs, it could be such a statement if they're able to beat them. But Colts and Loveland would be able to help them even more. Yes, wide receivers should be something that they look at. Maybe they just look at that in free agency. I don't even know if they'll be able to get one, but Colson Loveland is better than most of the wide receivers that are left on the board, in my opinion. I just can't see it going any other way but him. Now, with that, the Ravens are now here at the 24 spot, which is kind of surprising to me, but we'll move on from that. They go Nate Wiggins last year. I think they go cornerback again, but it's not an undersized, underweight type of corner that has upside, but doesn't really have a crazy amount to me. Nate Wiggins hasn't been fantastic, but he's been good. Darian Porter out of Iowa State is probably going to be the first round pick and being another corner that the Ravens get in back-to-back drafts. But this is not a similar scenario to last year. Darian Porter is a 6'4" athletic freak, and since the start of the season, he's only allowed 4 receptions. Yes, there may be more talented cornerbacks and more resume-filled cornerbacks higher than Darian Porter. But I don't know. I feel like the Ravens are the type of player or the type of team to go after that type of player. And this is kind of where I expected Tacario Davis to be that type of guy because, I mean, come on. 6'4", 190. That's basically identical to what Darian Porter is. Darian Porter had just been a lot better than Tacario Davis, obviously. Only allowing 4 receptions. Blows my mind. I think the Ravens see that and think, that's insane. We need to get that guy, even if it's another corner. That defense is the Ravens' identity. And when that defense is not performing well, like they almost screwed up against the Chargers in the game last night, they need to make sure that they make that defensive back room stifling. But the Chargers, seeing that Colson Loveland is off the board, Harbaugh is probably heartbroken a little bit. He shouldn't be heartbroken for long because Tyler Warren out of Penn State has been another consistent player who has only dropped 1 pass all season. And he also is very solid in the run game, which the Harbaugh offense basically runs around. Pun intended. But Tyler Warren could help not only Justin Herbert, but all the running backs as well. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he makes a case to probably go above Colston Loveland come the draft. But right now, Colston Loveland is still my guy in terms of tight end 1. And Tyler Warren should be there for the taking for the Chargers if they're not able to get Colston Loveland, if another team gets him. Now, the Steelers are definitely going to be looking wide receiver. George Pickens has been on an island at points with basically everybody just looking at him, and that's it. The Steelers' wide receiver room needs desperate need of talent, and I think Xavier Restrepo can bring that. He is top 5, top 10 wide receiver in UM history. I mean, he has the record for receiving yards, but he's been one of those guys that are great after the catch, almost like a Cooper Kupp, Khalil Shakir type of wide receiver that he gets the ball and is always looking for that space to get out and would help that struggling core on the Steelers more than they really need it. And I could see it being a great compliment to George Pickens because clearly George Pickens is just here to go up and get it or your go route guy. Xavier Restrepo, another guy that can be your reliable route runner. And the Green Bay Packers are a team that could be looking at multiple different positions right now. But I'm going to have them going with a defensive tackle. And Kenneth Grant is just here for the taking right now. And while I do want TJ Sanders to be the one going here, Kenneth Grant has been able to impress this season. Now, I've been hesitant to take him higher just because of the fact that he might be benefiting off of Mason Graham's struggle to show off. But Mason Graham has still been able to be that guy. I took... Who was it? Alfred Collins. Simply because I think that fits the Texans scheme a bit more. But Kenneth Grant should be able to have a similar scenario for the Packers as he does with Michigan, because they already have a talented defensive tackle. Adding another one would only help them. And I can't see Kenneth Grant going anywhere else but Green Bay. And the Minnesota Vikings have a struggling cornerback room, except for Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy Jr. has been impressive this season. I know that I said otherwise, but I think that I was getting a little blinded from the fact that the rest of the cornerbacks have not been doing great. But him himself has been doing better than he did on the Cardinals. Siobhan Revel is someone who had a season-ending injury, but before he got injured was very highly ranked and has the possibility of bringing a lot of talent to this Vikings defense that they're in desperate need of. And cornerback at this point in this draft, I can't see them going anywhere else but him. Oh, Azariah Thomas. I love him in Dynasty, but you can go watch that on your own time. But Siobhan Revel, again, very talented player. I think he was one of the better cornerbacks, and I wish that he got the season to show it. Rounding out this draft class, though, we're going to have the Eagles taking Jalen Walker, which is listed at linebacker, but with the fact that Josh Sweat might be on the move, as basically every edge rusher has left the Eagles at this point, they definitely need a pass rusher. And Jalen Walker has been able to do that to an extreme at Georgia in ways that they've needed it more than anything. And with Micah Williams being that run defender that we were talking about, Jalen Walker has been the complement at pass rushing. And with the Eagles, he would definitely be able to do just that, with complementing the rest of that defensive line. And at this point, they're just the Philadelphia Bulldogs. So you might as well just sit into it even more. He would help this Eagles defense a lot. Now, the Bills at the 30th spot, I've been wanting them to take safety. Malachi Starks is not going to be at the board at the 30th spot. And they might even be lower than this with their pace that they've been at. There's a very talented edge rusher out of Ole Miss named Princely. I'm not even going to try to say his last name yet. But Princely has 21 sacks and QB hits on 230 pass attempts. Maybe Buda Baker's going to be available for them come the offseason. Who knows? But at this very moment, if you're able to put somebody as talented as Princely across from Greg Russo, who's having a career year, I think it would only help them. I mean, Von Miller is only getting older. He hasn't been the Von Miller that they expected. They need to be moving on from him and getting that edge even younger than it is. And the Kansas City Chiefs probably kicking rocks just because both tight ends are off the board. They probably wanted to replace Travis Kelce, not now, but long term. I think they go tackle since it hasn't really been their strong suit. Wanya Morris hasn't been the definition of consistency with penalties, with just not being able to protect Patrick Mahomes as much as they need him to. Wyatt Millum out of West Virginia has definitely made a case. He's a great pass blocker, above average run blocker, but I think the Chiefs should go tackle at this point in the draft with tight end not being an option. I don't think they go running back. After Ashton Gency, I don't think a running back gets taken until the second round, although Quinshon Judkins is talented. Wyatt Millam just seems like the best case scenario for the Chiefs and their future at tackle. And with the last pick in the first round, edge is, again, a glaring need just because of that Aiden Hutchinson season-ending injury that just seemed very gruesome. It raised a lot of red flags, and one of them was that depth in the edge rusher room. Although they've been able to perform well without Aiden Hutchinson. But LT Overton would be able to add a lot more to that Lions defense. Although they did just get Zadarius Smith, I think that adding another edge rusher is the way to go for the Detroit Lions. 31 pressures on 200 pass attempts should do nothing but help them and their future. Out of Alabama, LT Overton, the very last pick in the first round. And that's going to do it for this draft. One of my more confident ones in terms of who I know that I want each team to get. Took a lot of time to figure it out, but if you have any opinions about it or any contradicting opinions, let me know down in the comments below. I don't mind talking to you guys about this. I actually enjoy it just because it gives me a different perspective on it, and it gives me more to think about whenever I'm making another mock draft. I'm starting to pick these up just because it's getting closer to the end of the season, closer to the end of the college football season, getting closer to the college playoffs that might have certain players stand out more. Colorado might not even be in the college playoffs. We don't know. We are still waiting to see what happens with that. But I'm very confident in this one. If you enjoyed it, please go down there and like so more people can see it so we can have more of a conversation down in the comments below. If you don't think a certain player is going somewhere, let me know and tell me who you think is going there. But while you're down there, subscribe so you don't miss out on the rest of these mock drafts for the rest of the season. I love making these because I just love talking about these prospects and the future of teams and the possibilities. Possibilities are endless. But I will see you in the next video. Peace.